what is the world that we want to live in once we come out of COVID and say, okay, well, maybe because we all want to survive COVID, it's all right to use these applications now, but they need to be time limited. We need to have a way back to the society that we actually want to live in, which isn't a surveillance society.
Firth-Butterfield has been a barrister at law and former part-time judge, a professor of law and international relations in the United States, associate fellow at the Center for the Future of Intelligence, University of Cambridge, fellow at the Robert E. Strauss Center on International Security and Law, University of Texas, vice chair at the IEEE Initiatives on Ethics of Autonomous Intelligence System. She co-founded AI Austin, AI Global, and the Consortium for Law and Policy of Artificial Intelligence and Robotics. She was named one of the top 25 women in robotics, RoboHub in 2017. She is currently the head of artificial intelligence and machine learning at the World Economic Forum. I wish you enjoyed this conversation. Thank you, Kay, for being part of Change I Am Possible podcast. This is a humble effort to kind of educate people about the fourth industrial revolution, how it's going to impact all of us all around the world, right? Coronavirus, right? Everybody is talking about it. It's impacting the entire world. It's got the entire world to a standstill, right? So let's chat a little bit about coronavirus, right? You heading the artificial intelligence at World Economic Forum. So how do you think coronavirus is going to impact the global economy?
Well, undoubtedly, it's going to affect the global economy in ways that we don't understand yet, and in ways that are obvious. You know, if people are not going to work, we are not making things, we're not selling things, and so therefore the economy is obviously going to be delayed. But I do think that there are possibilities that we need to be thinking about of how the economy will be affected. So, for example, one of the pieces of work that we're doing at the moment, actually out of our India Center, is some work on chatbots, AI-enabled chatbots in healthcare. So what we are seeing is actually some companies are going ahead and using chatbots in call centers where they can't get their employees to come to work. That's a development that we hadn't expected to see quite as quickly. A lot of them are fairly rough and ready, but they are doing the job. And so what we need to think about is, well, when we come out to the end of coronavirus, might some of these jobs that we took for granted actually have been automated? So that would in itself be an issue for the economy. And on the other side, on the positive side, I think that what we need to be thinking about as those of us working in AI is how can we, during this time, just sort of keep on keeping on so that what we have is a viable AI economy as we come out of coronavirus epidemic.
So you said the automation impact on the economy, right? So that's it's such an easy stage. It's just opening up, right? I mean, in India, Cognizant recently laid off 7,000 people, right? And that's because they are, and senior people, right? So they laid off the senior people because they're taking in this younger workforce who are adept at IoT, blockchain, and all of this new technology, right? So it looks like a double whammy at this point in time. You know, there's this automation, which obviously, I mean, besides the job that it might take, it also promises that the AI will create a new job market, right? So with this automation growing and possibly taking the jobs, and then coronavirus, which is possibly maybe 1 quarter, 2 quarter, things are going to look quite difficult, right? So is World Economic Forum bringing in initiatives to kind of mitigate this problem at this point in time?
Yes, certainly. I think, first of all, I should go back to the fact that we at the forum, we do believe that more jobs will be created than are lost through the use of artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies. But of course, the conversation is always, when do the jobs created compared to when are the jobs lost? Comment that I just made about the fact that we are already seeing chatbots being used means that actually the impact of COVID is to bring forward perhaps some of those job losses. And so the scale that we're thinking about is now slightly changed. And so that's something that we need to really sort of go and think about and push further and more quickly ahead with some of the things that we are working on in terms of reskilling workforce populations. And also it's going to be more pressing for companies themselves to think about, what do we do in terms of education, training and learning internally or externally? So what Microsoft, for example, has set up an AI center in Kentucky. So taken it outside the sort of Silicon Valley or Seattle environments and said, well, you know, there are people who need jobs in this area, so we need to be thinking about how we increase the AI economy across a country or across the world.
So you mentioned that in India, there are people who are building chatbots for healthcare, right? So with this COVID-19 pandemic, I mean, in South Korea, they have this app where they're using it for quarantine patients, right? I mean, what the app does is, supposing if you are quarantined, it kind of monitors you. If you move out of the house, the message goes on to the government, and you have to keep on updating it on a daily basis. So at least the ones who the doctors know your status as a patient. Then there are, in China, they have these surveillance cams, these thermal based AI driven cameras, which can actually detect a fever. Right. So now surveillance, that's with artificial intelligence, that's a big problem, right? And these things, they gather a lot of data, right? And it's not just artificial intelligence. I mean, you talk about IoT tomorrow. I mean, in the coming few years, I think everything is going to be connected. You know, right from glasses to clothes to bottles, toilets, everything's going to be connected with virtual reality. That's a extremely potent technology, right? Today, I mean, we have these headgears which captures inside outside data, right? And some of the biggest companies, like, you know, you used to see Facebook, Microsoft, Google, they're working on building these cameras which will eventually capture all your data, right? So in that world, where what happens to our data privacy? What happens to this technology growing? Is there any legal or ethical frameworks built in for this exponential technologies?
Yes, certainly. So, I mean, this is a question that we work on all the time. And not just myself, but my colleagues, Jeff Merritt, who heads IoT, and Sheila Warren, who heads our work around data policy and blockchain. Just sort of carving your question into a number of segments. On the chatbots, obviously India has just released its own chatbot, in terms of the Ministry of Health has just released its own chatbot in terms of helping to avoid the spread of coronavirus. Germany has offered a sort of buy-in yourself. So, you know, you can volunteer the data from your wearables to Germany to help for them to be able to assess where the spread of the virus is. The National Health Service in England has something similar. And so we are seeing some of these applications out there, some applications that are using facial recognition and geolocation tracking. I think the big question for any of this is actually, you know, to fast forward and say, what is the world that we want to live in once we come out of COVID, and say, okay, well, maybe because we all want to survive COVID, it's all right to use these applications now, but they need to be time limited. We need to have a way back to the society that we actually want to live in, which isn't a surveillance society. And so we either build that in now, and one of the things that I'm thinking of doing at the World Economic Forum is to create an expert panel that thinks about ethics. And so if you're thinking about creating one of these quick fixes for COVID, you could come to us and you could say, what are the ethical challenges here? And how can we mitigate them at the moment? And how can we deal with it when we get to the other end? So there's those sort of things. I think it's very much country-based. Some people value their privacy more than others. We need to allow populations and governments to create their own views about privacy. Certainly some countries are dealing with the sharing of data in a different way. And we might sort of think about something that we at the forum are calling data for common purpose. Might we want, for example, to share our data because we want everybody to survive a pandemic? If we have cancer, might we want to share our data so that a cure can be found? But, you know, might we want to limit who we share that data with? And so really sort of thinking about how do we use our data in a way that we as individuals want to use our data, as opposed to perhaps as we're having data being used in relation to us at the moment.
Yeah, rightfully said. I guess data privacy is such a big open-ended conversation, right? I hope the blockchain comes in and then instead of these big behemoths who hoard our data, the data gets in the hand of the individuals, right? So yes, I mean, I'm definitely not saying that tech is bad. In fact, the channel is to kind of promote and make people understand about the potential of technology. It is a double-edged sword. It has these plus points, but it has a lot of minus points also, right? So what, according to you, or which technology you think are going to define humanity's path forward, and which technology you think are going to be existential threat?
AI is going to be everywhere because it is the technology with such potential to help us as human beings move on to create better lives for our children and to tackle some of the things that we as human beings have been unable to do so far. So, for example, it's excellent, or it has the potential to be excellent, at finding cures for diseases that we haven't been able to find. And that's just because it's better at maths than we are. It can do that matching and predictions so much better than we can because it does it quicker. What we're talking about, of course, when we say AI, is we're talking about various applications of machine learning at the moment. We're not talking about artificial general intelligence. And so I think that all countries and individuals need to be, and companies need to be aware of the potential of AI and the problems of AI. And so I would certainly like to see, and it's one of the pleasures of doing a program like this with you, I'd like to see more of this conversation. We can't create the society we want to create unless we actually are all informed and can be part of that conversation. In terms of what the future is for AI, other than being the tool that we use ubiquitously across all of our lives, I think those of us who are working in the space take the view that the benefits are likely to outweigh the negativities. And certainly my Global AI Council is currently working on something that we call a Sci-Fi Futures initiative. And that's really looking at what are the positive futures with AI and how do we then think about policy which will take us to that positive outcome. Other piece that we have to think about is, well, what is artificial general intelligence and what is super intelligence? And when might we see them? And is this something that we should worry about? Well, I would say two things on that. First of all, there are a lot of things with AI that we need to worry about at the moment: fairness, bias, accountability, explainability, privacy. So we need to start working there. Even the most optimistic people do not see AGI for 15 years, and many people put it much further than that. There are a number of, but I at the moment am focusing my work and the work of the World Economic Forum on today's problem.
So yes, you're talking about AGI, but it looks like an inevitability, and obviously we don't really know the timelines, but we need to have conversations at this point in time and kind of be prepared rather than be unprepared or caught like how we were caught right now. I believe that it's not about playing blame games, but if and only if the global leaders would have taken the heed of the World Health Organization about this pandemic and possibly kind of restricted these foreign travelers coming in from these infected nations, or at least have some sort of screening and quarantining these people, maybe today could have panned out completely different. So again, I've jumped into COVID-19, but moving from there, can you share with our audience some of the initiatives that World Economic Forum has taken out with artificial intelligence?
Yes, certainly. So at the risk of boring everybody, we do have 12 different ongoing projects at the moment, or ongoing projects with some projects that are also finished. So I'll just take a few to give you an idea of the depth and breadth of the work that we're doing. But you will see that all of them focus on the areas of operationalizing ethics from these big picture issues that I talked about before, such as bias and fairness and explainability, security and privacy. So starting with the first project that we finished and launched at Davos this year, that was a toolkit for boards of directors. It is available for free. We can send you the link, and we would love you to use the link with these materials, because the more directors who use the toolkit, the better we think that the development of AI and the use of AI by companies will be. The idea behind that was really that we found that a lot of board directors didn't really understand AI beyond the word AI, and actually didn't necessarily understand what AI meant when it was broken down. And so it's a tool that they can use to understand more about the actual science, but also to see that if their company is using artificial intelligence or thinking about adopting artificial intelligence, they have specific oversight responsibilities in relation to the use of AI. And so the tool consists of 12 different modules, the module at the very center being ethics, so that hopefully the board of directors understands that there is a huge need to deploy these technologies ethically within your company. And you can just go online or on your mobile app or on your tablet and read the various questions that you should be asking of your C-suite, so that you can correctly oversee and perform your duties as a director. We are currently now working on a version of that for the C-suite, because whenever we talked about it, the C-suite kept saying to us, well, where's our version of this? So that's one piece of work that we're doing. And the idea behind, as I say, behind all of it is to say, okay, there are these principles that people need to know, but they need to know how to operationalize that within their country or within their company. On the company side, another piece of work that we're doing, which is led by a professor from McGill University, and an employment lawyer from Baker McKenzie, is creating a toolkit for human resource professionals to use. What we know is that AI can stop your career before it starts if it's used badly in human resources. And so we want to give the human resource departments the tools to be able to use it wisely so that it enhances their work. Another piece of work that we're moving back to facial recognition and surveillance is with the government of France. We are looking at how governments use facial recognition, for example, in times of crisis, but more often in terms of terrorists and criminals, and how that use butts up against our civil liberties, and what are the ground rules that we should be putting in place to ensure that we continue to enjoy our civil liberties whilst the state is protected. So moving then to another project that we did around the elevating of an AI economy and growing the AI economy. We've been working with the British government to create guidelines for procurement of artificial intelligence by the government. And you can really embed a lot of the things that we want to be seen in terms of the ethical challenges of AI into something like that. And it grows then an ethical AI economy, because if you are allowing startups to sell to your government, you're growing a startup AI economy, but also you are saying there are various ethical things that we need to be in your tools, and so therefore you're growing that ethical AI economy. And with all of our work, the idea is to scale globally. And so we will be hoping that other governments adopt that as a way of increasing their rate of growing that AI economy. That's particularly true and important, for example, in countries where we're not seeing a lot of actual in-country development of AI, and countries that are perhaps buying in artificial intelligence instead of creating it on the ground. And as I said earlier, it's really important that as we come out of coronavirus, we can begin to grow that in-country economy. So that's sort of a brief overview of the work that we have been doing. I told you about the chatbots work that we have been doing around healthcare, but that's generally around the use of chatbots. And I think just in conclusion, because I started with Children Are Our Future, we do have a project with UNICEF around what are the rights of children in relation to artificial intelligence. And of course, you know, this has been brought home very much in the time of COVID, where a lot of parents are struggling to home educate their kids. And if you have access to an AI-enabled toy which educates your children, there are a few things that you should be thinking about. What is the privacy setting on that toy? Who is your children's data being shared with? Most countries have very strict rules about sharing children's data, but if it's data used for education, a lot of countries exempt that and allow longer storage of data. You should certainly know whether your children's data is going to be sold to a third party. You might want to think about if the toy also includes facial recognition, where do you want to deploy that toy in your household? You might also want to think about the safety of your child's information. How hackable is this toy? You might also want to think about the fact that the toy has to listen in order to be able to interact with your child. What do you want that toy listening to? I could go on because there are a large number of things that we are going to be recommending that parents look for when they're buying these toys. And we plan to create a Smart Toy Award ceremony in November. And we will be looking at toys and saying, do they meet these categories and guidelines that we have identified for good use of AI in the education system? Because undoubtedly AI could be fantastic at helping us educate the world, which of course is what we want to achieve.
I believe that interactive learning is the future, something which is driven by AI and driven by virtual reality. That's the future of education. But yes, I guess we need to set those legal frameworks right in, because you don't really know what all data that AI would be capturing of your children, right? Because yes, the future looks exciting because it's going to redefine the education. So far, our education, the traditional education system seems to be crumbling, and we need something like this which can take the education system forward. So you said about expanding into other nations, about the initiatives that you're doing. Are you looking at those less developed nations? Because if you see at this point in time, China is leading when it comes to AI, and North America, US, Europe, those countries are anyway leading, but there are countries like Pakistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Sri Lanka. They are still behind, but I see them as an opportunity. What are your views on that?
It's the purpose of the World Economic Forum, although that sounds trite, but it is very true. I personally have been very concerned that we ensure that the benefits of AI are equally distributed throughout the globe. That's why I talk about growing local economies, AI economies. In terms of the work that we are doing, we have created a number of offices of the Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution in San Francisco, Japan, and India. So there is one in Mumbai. And we are also pairing with governments to create what we call affiliate centers. And the affiliate centers we currently have, which are linked to my work in AI, are 2 in Africa, 2 in Latin America, 2 in the Middle East, 3 in the Middle East, 4 in the Middle East, and 1 in Europe. And office in India is actually leading 3 projects. One is the chatbot project that I talked about. The second is a project which is around how do you operationalize the ethical chapter of your wonderful national AI strategy. It is often more easy to put the words on the page than it is actually to operationalize them. And the third piece of work that we're doing out of India is thinking about the Institute of Ethical Things. So as you rightly mentioned, we've got lots of Internet of Things collecting data, but what do we then do with that data, and how do we translate it ethically into the way that we use it when we run AI over it?
With World Economic Forum, there's a lot of critique which has come to you guys, because people globally are saying that it's a forum for billionaires, right? Because there seems to be, you guys do talk about the climate impact, you guys do talk about poverty, immigration, but somehow there has been zero representation of them. So do you see that as a shortcoming, and are you going to address that and kind of talk about inclusivity from now?
Well, I think that's a totally unfair criticism. I joined the forum in 2017 after a long career in human rights and thinking about how we can make the world better for everyone. I certainly wouldn't have joined if I felt the way that you've just characterized the forum. And also, I mean, I just see it as wrong. If you think back to 2017, we created a one of the first pieces of work thinking about how we should move beyond GDP to also thinking about well-being and having well-being metrics. So if you go back to 2017, there's a paper on that. This Davos, we spent a lot of time thinking about climate and environment, and currently Professor Schwab has been talking about the need for stakeholder capitalism, and has, in fact, if you look right back for the 50 years, the first Davos ever was built on the idea that we should move to stakeholder capitalism. And so we do a lot of work in thinking about inclusion, and the way that we have opened all these affiliates across the world so that we can make sure that we bring the benefits of these emerging technologies fairly across the world, I think is just a complete indication of our dedication in this space.
Is World Economic Forum or the role which you had, are you guys looking at partnerships from different parts of the world? And any last words to our listeners?
Yes, definitely. We have partners all over the world. We have government partners all over the world, and we at the highest level, and we look for companies that want to engage in our work in all the countries around the world, and particularly those where we have affiliates. So what I would say to your listeners in India is we want you to join our work. We have work ongoing in India, and we have work ongoing around the world. So there is probably a project that you want to engage with. And the way to do that is simply to write to us at ai@weforum.org. So it's really easy to engage. You can find a whole list of our projects on our web page. And beyond that, if there are things that we are not working on that you feel we should be working on, then we want to know about that as well. And if you want to lead that, or if you're part of a group that's already working on that, we as the forum can amplify your message well beyond your locality.
Right, lovely. So thank you, Kay, for being a part of Change and Possible podcast and sharing your insights. And yes, I guess this conversation, like you mentioned, it's about having these conversations, and these conversations which can turn into tangible benefits, actionable benefits, will make this world a better place. And I guess this is the ethos, of all of the podcast, is to kind of spread awareness and educate people about this transformation technology and what it can do to humanity once it matures. So thank you for joining Change and Possible podcast. Sincerely appreciate it. And to my listeners, if you like what you see, please press the subscribe button. Until next time, see you guys. Bye-bye. Thank you.